The Sacramento Kings nearly pulled off a impressive and needed loss, but unfortunately Davion Mitchell is just too damn good. That and the Houston Rockets clearly don't have any indication of winning another basketball game for the remainder of this season. But despite the negative effects that this Kings win has on their draft lottery odds, which we will go over, Davion Mitchell continues to shine. Damian Jones and Trey Lyles right alongside him with some big games offensively for the Kings, some good moments during a dreadful fourth quarter, and even De'Aaron Fox has been doing things on the bench that have me smiling. I'll tell you all about it on today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of your Sacramento Kings from January through December, this is the place for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode is brought to you by NBA Top Shot. NBA Top Shot is the future of being an NBA fan. Own officially licensed rare NFTs of the greatest moments from NBA history. Sign up today at lockedon.nbatopshot.com. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been a Sacramento sports media member the last 7 years. This is my 8th season covering Kings basketball. And two things. One, peek behind the curtain. I just recorded the first 20 minutes of this podcast without actually hitting the record button. So I've been talking to myself for like 20 minutes. So this is actually take 2. And I'm feeling a little better about it. And honestly, even though that was 20 minutes of my life I wasted, it was 20 minutes better spent than at times watching this Kings and Rockets game tonight. A game in which I was admittedly actively rooting against the Kings. I'm sorry. I know some of you or many of you are like that. I hate being that guy. I hate doing that. I'm sorry, but I have been. That's kind of been what I was doing in this game. I'm not going to lie to you because I recognize that with the New Orleans Pelicans and the Portland Trailblazers playing right now, and actually I should check the score on this because you're going to be listening to it after this game is over. You're going to already know the result, but I'm recording while this is going on. And actually Portland is up on the Pelicans by 3 points at halftime. I hope to God that holds, because if it doesn't, then the Kings and Trailblazers will be tied, I believe, in the NBA draft lottery standings, tied for the best odds at the 6th overall pick. I'm not sure how the tiebreaker works, if it goes to either one of those teams or if it's a coin flip. I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, with the Kings beating the Houston Rockets and with a Portland Trailblazers loss, that gap, that little comfort net that the Kings had over the Blazers just a couple of games ago, that shrinks to nothing. Nada. Meanwhile, Sacramento continues to not make up any ground, or in fact, the gap gets wider and wider between the Kings and the Pacers, and the Pacers have the best odds of the 5th overall pick. So the negativity, the negative effect that this Kings win has is felt. It's recognizable. And for those of you who are following the draft lottery standings, it's probably something that's making your guts grumble a little bit, probably making you a little bit sick to your stomach. That being said, it's still a Kings win, guys. It's still a win. And there are still things from this win to pull out and to enjoy. Even though it's meaningless in the sense of Kings playoff standings and chances of making the postseason, even though the Kings somehow mathematically still have a fraction of a chance. It's not going to happen, but they still technically have not been eliminated from playoff/play-in contention. These games are not meaningless. What Davion Mitchell is doing right now, because he's continued to be on a tear during this road trip, but since De'Aaron Fox went down with an injury and he's taken over not only the primary point guard role, but just the primary scoring role for this Kings team, that's not meaningless. What Damian Jones did tonight, his career high 24 points, that's not meaningless. Near double-double as well, also had 5 assists. That's not meaningless. What Dante DiVincenzo, the moments that he's provided in the fourth quarter alongside Davion Mitchell, both defensive and offensive moments that haven't just happened once or twice, but multiple times in multiple games over the course of this road trip. That's not meaningless. So it's important, even though, grand scheme of things, what's best for the Kings, draft lottery odds are being negatively affected because of these meaningless wins at the end of the season. what these Kings players are doing, the players that we expect to be on this roster next season, impactful players on this roster next season, what they're doing is not meaningless. Now, I will admit, I am preaching to myself as well as you here. I'm trying to convince myself because, like I've already said, I know the significance of those draft lottery odds, and I know how little we'll care about these wins in the grand scheme of things when it's all said and done. I know that if Davion Mitchell goes on to have a phenomenal career, or Dante DiVincenzo is excellent for the Kings next season, or Damian Jones becomes a elite backup center, I know we're not going to look back at, hey, remember March 30th, 2022, when the Kings beat the Houston Rockets by 3 points? Remember that? That was the difference maker for them. I know. I get it. But still, it's good to see. It's a reminder of what these players are capable of. And as bad as the Houston Rockets are, and believe me, they are bad, even though they like to put up some highlight moments, they are a bad basketball team. They still have NBA talent on their roster. These are still NBA minutes, and that matters. That counts for something. We cannot discredit what Davion Mitchell has done, even though he's been doing it against the teams like the Pacers, who I thought should have been way better than what they showed. And he's going up against Tyrese Halliburton. We're sure as hell not going to discredit Tyrese, are we? Did it against the Orlando Magic. Well, the Magic have some of the best Magic players with their guards, like Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony. The Houston Rockets, Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green. Like, these are talented young players that DiVincenzo too, but mainly Davion Mitchell has been playing against. And he's been stepping up. Plus, this isn't the first stretch where Davion has looked this good. He also looked really good when De'Aaron Fox was out earlier this season and he was playing alongside Tyrese Halliburton. Now, what I just slipped in there might concern some people. He's this good when De'Aaron Fox is out. And I spent a recent podcast talking about how I'm still hesitant to name Davion Mitchell as a starter and to promote him to a full-time starter and to think that he can be that good fit next to De'Aaron Fox long-term in the starting lineup for the Kings next season because of De'Aaron Fox. Now, it's not an indictment on De'Aaron Fox at all. It just has to do with how players fit together and how their skill sets mesh. Even though Davion has continued to play well, and he led the Kings again in so many ways. It wasn't just offensively. He had some big moments in a fourth quarter that was absolutely dreadful to watch, by the way. Like, after 3 quarters of no team playing any defense, the fourth quarter, the defense wasn't that much better, but offense just forgot how to shoot. Maybe that or both teams just didn't want to score and win anymore, which of course isn't true, but it looked like that at times. I mean, I think through 6 or 7 minutes of that fourth quarter, either the Kings or the Rockets were outscoring each other 5-4. Oh, man. That fourth quarter was rough to watch. And thankfully, this game came to an end, and I would have died if the Rockets hit that buzzer beater 3 to send the game to overtime. After sitting through the Magic overtime, I don't know if I could have done another one on this road trip. And we still got one more chance at it when the Kings and Rockets meet again on Friday. But regardless, Davion delivered some great moments offensively throughout the game. Looking for a shot, had a massive tomahawk dunk, finally caught a body. He's been looking for dunks like that a number of times this season. A number of times he's been looking for that highlight. Finally, he got it. I'm glad he did. Also, clamped down Michael Porter Jr. at the end of the game. Didn't allow Porter Jr. to even get a shot off to try and tie the game. He had to pass the ball up. Love to see that. Drew a charge that I thought was a block, but did draw a big charge when the Rockets tried to get out in transition late in this game, which directly led to the win. And then another big pair of assists, one to Damian Jones, one to another Dante DiVincenzo corner 3. DiVincenzo had some more big defensive moments in the fourth quarter. Again, these are guys that we're hoping and expecting to be part of important parts of the Kings next season, and that Kings team we expect to be a playoff team next season. That's not meaningless. But again, when I talk about and I think about what Davion Mitchell and De'Aaron Fox can potentially be together, I was chatting with a Kings fan who was interacting with me on Twitter throughout the game, and God bless him for doing that to distract me a little bit. But he reaches out to me and he says, "Hey, Matt, I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong about Fox and Davion Mitchell, because I think," again, I'm speaking as him, he says, "I think that Davion is exactly what the Kings are looking for. I think Davion is that answer to the two-guard question that I've posed so many times here on Locked On Kings. My question to him and to everybody who has that thought, you could be 100% right. My question is, why, if Fox and Halliburton didn't work, why would Fox and Mitchell? Explain that to me. If you have a good explanation, I'm all for hearing it. And this gentleman on Twitter did have a good explanation. One of the things he talked about, he said, hey, Tyrese Halliburton, his skill set, he's more of a distributing guard. He's more of a true pure point guard. He's a pass-first point guard. Davion Mitchell is more of a scoring point guard, at least offensively. He's known more for his defense in general, but offensively, he looks to score more than he looks to set up his teammates. I hear that. And that's actually a great point, because that could be a major difference in how they play alongside De'Aaron Fox. However, the positives that we have seen from Davion Mitchell have come when Mitchell has had the majority of the possession in his hands. He has been in charge offensively, and he's needed the ball as much as he's had it to shoot 22 times like he did in tonight's game to score these points, to put up these numbers. And he's shot nearly 20 shots a game since De'Aaron Fox has been out. He's not going to get that when playing alongside De'Aaron Fox. So number one, he does need the ball in his hands a lot, even if he's not a pass-first point guard. Number two, Tyrese Halliburton is a better three-point shooter than Davion Mitchell, meaning Tyrese, theoretically, should have helped space the floor better than Mitchell would alongside De'Aaron Fox. Now, Mitchell sometimes is, in fact, a lot of the time, is more willing to shoot the three, it seems, than Tyrese Halliburton was for some reason, which is something that Tyrese still is trying to get over in Indiana. But in terms of three-point shooting percentage, in terms of which guy I have more confidence in to hit a big three-pointer, I'm sorry, it's Tyrese. So if Tyrese is a better shooter, a better floor spacer, a better distributor who doesn't need the ball in his hands as much as Davion Mitchell does seemingly to score at the rate that we've seen from Mitchell, why would Fox and Mitchell work when that didn't? I don't know. That's my thought process at this point. Again, I could be totally wrong. And the reality is we're not going to have answers to these questions, honestly, more than likely until either preseason or training camp later on this year in September, October time. And maybe not even then. Maybe it takes a handful of games or a handful of weeks at the start of next season to see if those two can coexist. But I don't know how much the Kings can afford to get off to a slow start to experiment with that, especially if it's De'Aaron Fox getting off to the slow start again. That can't happen if the Kings are going to be a playoff team next year. That's my point. But overall, even if I feel that way, I can still enjoy, and I have very much enjoyed what Davion Mitchell has done. 24 points for him, 24 points for Damian Jones, 24 points for Trey Lyles. Love to see all that. I'm going to actually pose a question about Trey Lyles and Chimezie Metu at the end of the podcast, so stick around for that. Plus, speaking of De'Aaron Fox, he's been doing a lot of great stuff on the bench. He's had an impact without having the ball in his hands or even being suited up. I'll tell you what I like so much of what I've seen from Fox after I tell you more about our title sponsor here of the Locked On Kings podcast today. I'm talking about NBA Top Shot, the officially licensed NFT of the NBA. You can connect with a passionate community of NBA fans across the globe and build your collection with your favorite moments from NBA history. NBA Top Shot is the future of what being an NBA fan looks like. It's part trading cards, part stock market, even part fantasy sports with a built-in loyalty program. NBA Top Shot has evolved trading cards and made it easier to buy, sell, and trade by removing the hassle of card grading, shoeboxes, and binders. Their 24/7 peer-to-peer marketplace lets you scroll through all of your favorite players and teams. Once you find the moment that you like and what you want, you can buy it. Couple of clicks, it's that easy. Also, owning NBA Top Shot moments can get you access to unbuyable, once-in-a-lifetime experiences. For example, last year, Top Shot flew out a group of fans to Phoenix for Game 5 of the NBA Finals just for having Phoenix Suns moments in their collections. And the following week, Top Shot flew a group of fans to New York for the NBA Draft, and these collectors got to have dinner with 4 future first-round picks the night before they were drafted, and they even got to play basketball with New York Knicks Obi Toppin. You can sign up for NBA Top Shot today. The best way to start collecting for yourself is by getting a starter pack. You can pull a moment of a superstar like LeBron or Kevin Durant, or you can get star rookie cards like Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley for just $9 for that starter pack. Head over to lockedon.nbatopshot.com. Start building your collection today. And today's episode of Locked On Kings brought to you by Truebill, an absolute must-have app here in 2022. And right now, you're probably thinking finances because it's tax season. Well, get those financial thoughts to make the right decision by getting Truebill, downloading on your phone. It's completely free, but it'll save you on average $720 a year. But what does it do? Basically, it collects and consolidates all of your subscriptions into one place, allowing you to see all the subscriptions that you have and cancel those subscriptions that you don't want or that you simply forgot about over time. And look, a lot of corporations, they're greedy, they scam you a little bit, they get those free trials to renew without your consent, and they even make their trials and their subscriptions hard to cancel. So instead of going through the hassle of it all, you can just click one button and have Truebill and their concierge do it for you, take care of those subscriptions for you, and ultimately save you money. Truebill has over 2 million users, has helped save them over $100 million. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA could save you thousands of dollars a year. Even though De'Aaron Fox has been in street clothes, even though he's still dealing with his injured hand, he still had a great impact on the Sacramento Kings as of late, sitting on the bench. Well, actually, to be fair, he's not doing a lot of sitting. He's been standing, and he's been coaching a lot off of that Kings bench. I don't know if you've noticed it. If you've watched these games, the camera has caught Fox a number of times speaking with his teammates, especially, though, with Davion Mitchell, pulling him aside and chatting with him after quarters, during timeouts, even in between possessions. You can see Fox talking to Mitchell, sharing his expertise, pointing things out. Mitchell is asking Fox questions. They're communicating. That is a growth in leadership that I need to see from De'Aaron Fox, that I've wanted to see from De'Aaron Fox in a while, and that I'm so thankful to see from Fox, despite the fact that he's not actually playing. Now, since the trade, De'Aaron has done a really good job of being more of a communicator on the floor. And he even did that before the trade, but it's really been noticeable since the NBA trade deadline this year. But what he's done on this bench, how actively he's been involved in coaching his teammates up, sharing his expertise, that's a million times better to me than him sitting on the end of the bench in street clothes, sipping on Gatorade and snacking on whatever food he can get his hands on and just watching as he collects another paycheck and his season winds down. Like, De'Aaron has been actively involved. He's sitting high up on the bench. Hell, he's sitting right next to the assistant coaches half the time. And he's been one of the assistant coaches over the course of this road trip recently. Love what he's seen, his communication with Davion specifically. Hell, he also got caught giving some advice and chatting a little bit with Jalen Green. So I don't know, maybe De'Aaron Fox was aware of the draft lottery odds too and wanted another top pick to add to his teammate list. I don't know. But I love what I'm seeing from Fox as that leader that we need him to be. That being said, the Kings still need that enforcer. And I don't know if Fox is ever going to be that enforcer, and that's okay. Fox has shown not only to be a leader by example on the floor, now he's shown to be that kind of quiet, communicative leader that talks but doesn't yell, doesn't scream. He doesn't need to. And while I do think the Kings could use a little more fire under their asses at times, could use an enforcer in that locker room, that doesn't mean they necessarily have to go out and find themselves an a-hole or a jerk who will come in and completely take over. But the Kings, in my opinion, do still need an enforcer. And I don't know if that guy is on this roster. But at least from what we've seen out of De'Aaron Fox lately, there is leadership there. And his teammates listen to him. I mean, it's one thing for you to listen to the star player who's paid way more than you because you know it's his team. It's another to listen to someone with a high basketball IQ who might share a skill set with you. I'm talking in the case of Davion Mitchell here, and learn from him. And that's what I've seen, at least connected from those two. That's what I've seen from De'Aaron Fox talking to Jalen Green. I love what I'm seeing from De'Aaron Fox off the bench. I hope that continues throughout the remainder of this season. And I hope we get an opportunity, the media gets an opportunity to speak with Fox at some point, either when the season ends or before the end of the season, like a postseason press conference. I'd love to talk to Fox and ask him about how much more comfortable he's gotten as that communicator, as that leader. Because he's admitted before that that's something that he's tried to work on and tried to get better at. And leadership is not necessarily something that you can teach. It's something that is more developed over time as relationships grow between teammates and a player grows in confidence with their voice. Also, typically as they get older, they become a little wiser and it becomes a little easier for them. Not always the case, but in a lot of times that is the case. So I want to hear from Fox about if it's been easier for him to recognize those moments and step up in those moments, both when he's actually playing and like right now when he's sitting on the bench. Love what I'm seeing from Fox here. I wonder if you noticed that too, because it's really stood out to me. There are two players that have been playing well recently that I have questions about. And unfortunately, there are two more players that I have to be a little more critical of. Again, that's all coming before we wrap up today's episode and after I tell you about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to carry and stock all the parts that you need. Why would you endure pointless or even intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, only the brands and the price points that they and their company have? You have computers, you have phones, you have access to rockauto.com at any time, meaning you have access to spend 30, 50, or even 100% less than your chain auto parts stores or your dealerships. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every customer, regardless of your knowledge of cars. If you're someone who's a car guru or someone like me who has no idea what the hell a car is half the time. And they have everything that you need, from brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. I have a question for you, Locked On Kings listener. What are you thinking? Where are you at with both Trey Lyles and Chimezie Metu? Trey Lyles also had a 24-point performance tonight. He has continued to be impressive, not phenomenal, but just really solid. Also had 12 trips to the free throw line. You love to see that. 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Just a good overall game for Trey Lyles. Where are you at with him? Because I've had a lot of conversations with people since one of my recent podcasts where I talked about fringe play. Actually, my most recent podcast where I talked about fringe talent and whether or not guys like Trey Lyles, Chimezie Metu, Jeremy Lamb, these guys have futures in Sacramento, and how many of these guys you can have on your roster before they become too much to the point that it's hurting your team more than helping your team. Trey Lyles, to me, is absolutely a fringe talent player. If he is your starter next season, like he's been mainly since he arrived here in the Marvin Bagley trade with the Detroit Pistons, I don't think the Kings are much better of a basketball team. It's not so much Trey Lyles, it's more of the Kings need to improve their starting lineup. Trey doesn't inspire the type of effect to the Kings starting lineup that is needed for the Kings to make the playoffs next year, in my opinion. But Trey Lyles could be a nice asset for you off the bench. But how many bench assets are you looking to have that actually make a legitimate impact? The way I've presented it is the Kings, in my opinion, have 3 for sure starters on this team right now. Fox, Fox, Barnes, and Sabonis. Then they have 2 for sure rotational NBA players in Davion Mitchell, who might even be a starter, but that's up in the air, and Dante DiVincenzo, who also could be a starter, and that's up in the air. 5 guys. Other than that, I also like Damian Jones as my guy, or as a guy that is a rotational impact player. And in my mind, the Kings need to have 5 absolute established NBA starters and 4 absolute established NBA role players. Is Trey Lyles one of those 4 absolute established NBA role players to you? What about Chimezie Metu? Metu has been impressive at times. He's also disappeared at times, had 9 points on 4 of 10 shooting. He's aggressive. He attacks. He is better spacing the floor than I think people give him credit for, even though his 3-point percentage could, of course, improve significantly. He's athletic. He's young. He's fiery. I like what Chimezie Metu does. Is Chimezie Metu good enough for you to label him as one of those NBA level rotation guys on a playoff team? Where are you at with those 2 guys? Because I would be perfectly fine, to be honest with you, with either of those guys or both of those guys being gone at the end of the season. Or if either of those guys are still around, they're as reserves. Meaning if someone goes down in the rotation or in the starting lineup, they then step up, get those minutes, and fill that gap. But again, with how good Trey Lyles has been playing, as good of moments as Chimezie Metu has had at times throughout his career, if Lyles or Metu are getting consistent minutes for the Sacramento Kings next season, I don't know how much better they are. That is to say, though, players who I expect to get minutes, guys like Harrison Barnes, I need more from them too. How many times since Fox and Sabonis have gone down have I talked about Harrison Barnes just not doing enough offensively? He is the third best player on this team, allegedly. Although I think now that he's done so much of this low scoring and few shooting or low shooting attempts per game, field goal attempts per game, I'm starting to think that's not the case. Like another game where he only scores or shoots 9 shots, only scores 13 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. I just need more. I need more from my established NBA starter. Need more from my alleged third best player. Certainly one of my go-to scorers, go-to offensive players. I need so much more from Harrison Barnes, and I think it is okay at this point in time to be concerned based on what I've seen at the end of this season about whether or not Barnes can be that guy long-term for the Kings with playoff expectations next year. Now, I could also turn that on its head and say, look, Harrison Barnes has played all season long. He's played on another crappy team. It's been a hell of a season that has exhausted me, let alone the players. It's the end of the season. It's about getting the young guys opportunities right now. Maybe him taking a passive role is okay. I'd listen to that argument. But I still personally want to see more and have needed to see more out of Harrison Barnes that I haven't gotten recently. And then there's Justin Holliday, who for some freaking reason continues to start. He only played 10.5 minutes in this game, had a big old goose egg, 0 points on 0-4 shooting, all of his attempts, 3-point shots. Again, didn't make a single one. Didn't get to the foul line. Had just 1 rebound. Like Justin Holliday, I don't know what the hell the point is of starting Justin Holliday at this point. Again, I hate saying this because I'm a fan of Justin Holliday. I like him. I think he can be good for this Kings team. What the hell's the point of starting him right now? Why? Why is he starting over Dante DiVincenzo? It makes no sense. And why is Neemias Queta not getting minutes? It makes no sense, Gentry. It just makes no sense. I want to hear from you now. I've talked enough. I've talked way more than I thought I was going to talk about this, whatever that Kings-Rockets game was. Let me know. I'm at George Sack on Twitter. How you feeling? Your thoughts on Fox and Mitchell. Your thoughts on Fox coaching on the bench. Davion Mitchell continuing to shine. Are you upset about the draft lottery implications of this win? Let me know. I'm at George Sack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I appreciate your support. As always, I'm hoping to have a guest join me on tomorrow's Locked On Kings podcast, so stay tuned for that. I hope you will return for that. And, of course, the Kings and Rockets do it all again. Hooray! Kings Rockets again on Friday night. We should have a podcast after that, as usual, as well. So please tune in for that. And don't worry, we're not slowing down even as the offseason approaches. This is going to be a massive offseason for the Sacramento Kings in so many ways. We'll have all of the offseason covered here on Locked On Kings too. So I hope you will keep Locked On Kings in your rotation for podcasts over the course of the summer months. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.